The maitre d' hesitated before pulling out the chair. Not because the reservation was wrong, but because everyone in the restaurant already knew who she was. Elena Moretti, billionaire investor, media darling, a woman whose name moved markets and whose presence silenced rooms. "Mom, can I sit by the window?" her son asked, tugging gently at her sleeve. Elena smiled, the sharp edges of her public persona softening instantly. "Of course, Leo." The restaurant was one of the most exclusive in the city. Crystal chandeliers, muted piano music, waiters who glided like shadows. It was the kind of place where mistakes weren't forgiven and children were rarely welcome. But Leo was different. He was 8, polite, observant, and heartbreakingly quiet for a child his age. Since his father's death 3 years ago, he watched the world carefully, as if afraid it might disappear if he blinked too long. Elena sat across from him, smoothing the sleeve of her tailored coat. She had taken him out to dinner to celebrate a small victory, his first full week at a new school where no one knew his last name. No reporters, she'd promised him. Just us. For a moment it worked, until Leo's gaze drifted past her shoulder. "Mom," he whispered, "why is that man standing?" Elena turned slightly, annoyance flickering, then paused. Near the edge of the dining room stood a man in a worn jacket, holding the hand of a little girl no older than 5. The girl clutched a stuffed rabbit, its ear frayed from too much love. Her shoes didn't match. One pink, one white. They didn't belong here. And everyone knew it. The host leaned down to the man, speaking in a low voice, but not low enough. "I'm sorry, sir. This establishment requires a reservation. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere." The man nodded quickly, embarrassment coloring his face. "I understand. My daughter's birthday dinner got canceled, and she just wanted to see the lights. We won't order anything. Just 5 minutes." The girl looked up at him. "Daddy, is it my fault?" Something twisted sharply in Elena's chest. The host sighed, glancing around. "Sir, please." The man bent down, forcing a smile. "No, sweetheart. Daddy just made a mistake." Leo gripped Elena's hand under the table. "Mom," he said softly, "that's not fair." Elena didn't answer. She was used to unfairness. She'd clawed her way out of it years ago, built walls so high no one could touch her again. This was none of her business. And yet, she watched as the man lifted his daughter into his arms, murmuring reassurances that didn't fool either of them. The little girl twisted to look at the restaurant one last time, at the chandeliers, the piano, the magic she wouldn't get to touch. Her eyes met Elena's. They didn't beg. They didn't accuse. They just accepted. That was worse. Elena felt something crack. "Mom," Leo whispered again. "Can we help them?" She closed her eyes briefly. This was dangerous territory. One small gesture became headlines. One kind act turned into speculation. She'd learned the cost of compassion in public places. But Leo was watching her. Not the billionaire. Not the woman on magazine covers. His mother. Elena stood. The scrape of her chair against marble cut through the room like a blade. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The host stiffened. "Ms. Moretti, is everything to your satisfaction?" Elena ignored him and walked directly toward the man. Up close, she noticed details she hadn't from afar: calloused hands, tired eyes, a posture bent not by weakness, but by years of carrying too much alone. "You don't need a reservation," she said calmly. "You're having dinner with us." The room went silent. The man blinked. "Ma'am, Elena crouched to the little girl's level. "Happy birthday," she said gently. "What's your name?" "Mia," the girl whispered. "Well, Mia," Elena smiled. "My son Leo loves birthdays. Would you join us?" Mia looked at her father, uncertain. He shook his head. "I can't accept this. I don't even know you." Elena straightened, her gaze steady. "I know what it's like to be turned away when you're doing your best. Sit, please." The host swallowed. "Ms. Moretti, company policy." Elena turned slowly. "Changes. One word. Final." The man hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'm Daniel." As they walked toward the table, murmurs followed them like ripples in water. Leo beamed at Mia, sliding his chair over. "You can have the window seat. It's the best one." Mia smiled for the first time that night. Elena sat down last. She told herself this was just dinner. Just kindness. Just a moment. She didn't know yet that this single decision, this unbelievable interruption of her carefully controlled life, was about to unravel everything she thought she knew about love, loss, and the kind of wealth money could never buy. And across the table, Daniel looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and something else. Something that would change all of them forever. Daniel hadn't planned on sitting at a billionaire's table. If someone had told him that morning that he'd end the day inside the most expensive restaurant in the city, sharing bread with a woman whose face appeared on financial magazines, he would have laughed, adjusted Mia's mismatched shoes, and gone back to worrying about rent. Yet here he was. His back stayed rigid as he lowered himself into the chair, as if any sudden movement might shatter the fragile permission he'd been given. Mia climbed onto her seat, eyes wide, hands hovering over the polished table like it might vanish if she touched it too hard. "Daddy," she whispered, "is this real?" Daniel swallowed.
"Yeah, Peanut."
"It's real." Across from them, Leo watched with gentle curiosity, not the guarded distance Daniel expected from a rich kid. He slid the breadbasket closer to Mia.
"These are warm," Leo said.
"You can break them in half." "That's what I do." Mia nodded solemnly, copying him exactly. Elena Moretti observed it all in silence. This was usually the moment when people tried too hard, when they thanked her excessively, asked for favors, dropped names, or grew awkward under the weight of her wealth.
Daniel did none of that.
He kept his eyes mostly on his daughter, helping her with her napkin, quietly reminding her to say, "Please." The absence of expectation unsettled Elena more than entitlement ever had. A waiter approached, noticeably nervous. "May I take your orders?" Elena handed Daniel the menu. "Order whatever you'd like." Daniel glanced at the prices and nearly choked. He leaned closer. "Honestly, ma'am, I don't think." "Elena," she corrected. "And you think wrong." He hesitated, then chose the simplest thing on the menu. So did Mia. Leo frowned. "You're supposed to pick the fun stuff." Daniel smiled faintly. "Fun stuff costs extra." Elena didn't miss the way he said it. Not bitter, not ashamed. Just factual. She gestured to the waiter. "They'll have the tasting menu." Daniel's eyes widened. "That's not necessary." "It is," she replied calmly. The waiter nodded and left. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the piano. "So," Elena said at last, "you said it's her birthday." Mia perked up. "I'm 5. Leo clapped softly. "That's big." Daniel nodded. Her mom used to say 5 was when everything started making sense. Elena's gaze sharpened slightly. "Used to?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "She passed away 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Elena said, and meant it. Daniel gave a small shrug. "Me too." The words landed heavier than expected. Elena recognized that tone, the sound of grief that had settled in for the long haul. She'd worn it herself after Leo's father died. Different circumstances, same hollow echo. The food arrived in stages, each plate more intricate than the last. Mia stared at the tiny portions like puzzles. "Is this all?" she whispered. Leo giggled. "It looks small, but it fills you up." Daniel smiled, relaxing slightly as the children bonded over unfamiliar flavors and shared confusion. Elena found herself watching Daniel when he wasn't looking. The way he cut Mia's food without being asked. The way he really listened when she spoke. The quiet confidence of a man who had learned to do everything alone. "What do you do?" Elena asked. Daniel stiffened, then answered honestly. "Construction. When there's work." "And tonight?" "Tonight was supposed to be pizza and a cupcake," he admitted. "But the power went out in our building." She asked if we could go somewhere fancy just to look. Elena's chest tightened. "And her shoes?" Leo asked innocently. Daniel glanced down, embarrassed. The washing machine flooded. One didn't dry in time. Mia hid her feet under the table. Elena reached down and gently nudged Mia's shoe with her own heel. They don't match my dress either, she said lightly. Fashion rules are overrated. Mia smiled, relief washing over her small face. The waiter returned with dessert and a candle. For the birthday girl, he said. Mia's eyes filled with wonder. Make a wish, Leo whispered. Mia squeezed her eyes shut so tightly her face scrunched. She blew, and the candle flickered out. Daniel cleared his throat, emotion rising unexpectedly. Thank you, he said to Elena. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, she replied. But even as she said it, Elena felt something shifting beneath the surface. This wasn't charity. This wasn't a headline. It was something far more dangerous. Connection. As dinner wound down, Elena noticed people staring, not with judgment now, but curiosity. Phones subtly lifted. Whispers spread. She was exposed. And so was Daniel. He noticed too. His shoulders tensed. If this causes trouble, it won't, Elena said firmly. But she wasn't entirely sure. Because as she looked at the single dad across from her, at the man who had nothing to offer her except honesty and quiet strength, Elena realized something unsettling. This dinner wasn't a moment she could walk away from. It was the beginning of a story neither of them was ready for. And fate, seated comfortably between two children sharing bread, was already smiling. The first problem arrived with the bill. Elena hadn't even glanced at it when the leather folder touched the table. But Daniel had. His face drained of color. He didn't open it fully. He didn't need to. One look at the embossed logo was enough to tell him this number would be more than his rent. I'll cover my part, he said quickly, reaching into his jacket. Elena raised a hand. Daniel. I mean it, he insisted, fingers already brushing his worn wallet. I don't want this to turn into something I owe. The word owe lingered. Elena studied him. Pride wasn't new to her, but this kind of pride was different. It wasn't loud or defensive. It was careful, protective. You don't owe me anything, she said quietly. Tonight was a gift. Daniel shook his head. Gifts are never free. Before Elena could answer, Leo spoke up. My mom doesn't give gifts, he said matter-of-factly. She gives choices. Elena blinked. Daniel looked at Leo, surprised. Is that so? Leo nodded. She says people should choose what they accept. Elena felt something twist in her chest. She hadn't realized how closely her son listened. She turned back to Daniel. Then choose this. No strings. Daniel hesitated. Mia was busy drawing smiley faces in condensation on her glass, blissfully unaware of adult tension. Finally, he exhaled. All right. Thank you. The words were simple, but the way he said them carried weight. As they stood to leave, the room buzzed again. This time louder. A woman near the bar whispered too boldly, "That's her." Another voice followed. "Is that his kid?" Phones were no longer subtle. Daniel noticed immediately. His body angled slightly toward Mia, a shield he'd perfected over years. "We should go," he said under his breath. "I don't want her photographed." Elena's jaw tightened. She waved the maitre d' over. "Have my car brought around." Side entrance. "Yes, Ms. Moretti." Daniel frowned. "That's not necessary." "It is," Elena replied. "For the children." Outside, night air wrapped around them, cool and sharp. A black sedan idled discreetly near the curb. Mia gasped. "Daddy, is that a limousine?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Something like that." Elena knelt beside Mia again and handed her a small white box. One more birthday thing. Inside was a pair of new shoes, soft, simple, and perfectly matched. Mia's mouth fell open. "They're the same." Daniel's breath caught. "Elena, They were in the gift shop downstairs," she said lightly. "No big deal." It was a lie. There was no gift shop. But Daniel didn't call her out. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. "Really?" As they pulled away from the curb, Elena watched them through the window, Daniel lifting Mia into her seat, buckling her in with practiced care. Something about the sight lingered longer than it should have. "Mom," Leo said softly from beside her. Are they lonely like us? Elena's grip tightened on her son's hand. Yes, she admitted. I think they are. The drive home was quiet, but Elena's phone was not. By the time she reached her penthouse, 3 notifications glowed on the screen. Social media alerts. A tagged photo. A headline forming before her eyes. Billionaire Elena Moretti dines with mystery man and child. She closed her eyes. So much for just a moment. The next morning, Elena walked into her office with her usual precision, heels clicking, posture flawless. The boardroom stilled the second she entered. Her assistant, Claire, approached quickly. We have a situation. Elena raised an eyebrow. Do we ever not? Claire handed her a tablet. The photo from the restaurant filled the screen. Daniel leaning toward Mia, Elena mid-laugh, Leo smiling between them. It looked intimate. Media wants a statement, Claire said. They're speculating. Let them, Elena replied. Claire hesitated. There's more. She swiped. Daniel's face appeared again, this time from a local news clip. Single father struggles as rising costs push families to the edge. Elena's breath caught. This was filmed last year, Claire explained. He spoke at a city council meeting about housing. It's going viral again. People are connecting the dots. Elena stared at the screen. So, he wasn't just a man who'd wandered into a restaurant. He was a man who'd stood up and spoken, knowing no one would listen. Find him, Elena said.
Claire blinked.
Excuse me? I want to talk to him, Elena continued. Privately. For what purpose? Claire asked carefully. Elena didn't answer right away. Because for the first time in years, the question in her mind wasn't about reputation or risk. It was about why a single dad who had nothing had somehow reminded her of everything she'd lost, and everything she might still be able to choose. And across the city, in a small apartment with flickering lights, Daniel tucked Mia into bed. He didn't know it yet, but that unbelievable dinner was about to follow him home. Daniel first realized something was wrong when his foreman stopped returning his calls. By noon, the unease had settled deep in his gut. Construction work was never steady, but this silence was different. No callbacks. No texts. Just a vague message from a coworker. Hey man, management says your name came up. Daniel reread it 3 times. His name didn't come up. It stayed down. He worked, kept his head low, went home to his daughter. That was the deal. At the job site the next morning, the gate was locked. A security guard stepped forward. Daniel Reyes? Yes. Supervisor wants to see you. Daniel's pulse spiked. He followed the guard into a trailer that smelled of stale coffee and dust. The foreman wouldn't meet his eyes. Look, the man muttered. This isn't personal. It never is, Daniel replied evenly. The foreman slid a folded paper across the desk. We're downsizing. Effective immediately. Daniel stared at the words. Downsizing. After 3 missed shifts he hadn't even been told about. This has nothing to do with the restaurant, does it? Daniel asked quietly. The foreman's jaw tightened. Off the record? People don't like attention. Daniel folded the paper carefully. Understood. He left without arguing. Pride again. Useless, but all he had. Across town, Elena was being warned. His termination will look like retaliation, Claire said, pacing Elena's office. If the public connects it to you. Elena cut her off. It wasn't me. I know, Claire replied. But optics don't care. Elena stood at the window. The city stretched beneath her like a chessboard. Pieces moved whether she approved or not. Get me the company's ownership structure, Elena said. Claire stopped. You're not serious. I'm always serious. Within hours, Elena learned the truth. The construction firm was a subcontractor. One of dozens owned by a shell company. A shell company ultimately funded by her. She felt sick. So firing him protected me, Elena said flatly. Indirectly, Claire replied. Yes. Silence fell. Elena remembered Daniel's voice at the table. Gifts are never free. He'd been right. Fix it, Elena said. Claire hesitated. Quietly or publicly? Elena turned. Her eyes were sharp, resolute. Publicly. Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, bills spread like accusations. Mia colored nearby, humming softly. "Daddy," she said, "are we poor again?" Daniel forced a smile. "We're okay." She nodded, unconvinced. A knock sounded at the door. Daniel opened it to find a woman in a tailored coat, Elena's assistant. "Mr. Reyes? Ms. Moretti would like to speak with you." Daniel's jaw set. "About what?" "About a mistake," she said. An hour later, Daniel stood in Elena's penthouse, city lights blazing behind her like a backdrop she'd chosen deliberately. "I didn't ask for help," Daniel said before she could speak. "I know," Elena replied. "That's why I'm offering an apology." He frowned. "An apology doesn't pay rent." "No," she agreed. "But accountability might." She explained everything. The subcontractor. The pressure. The quiet punishment meant to discourage attention. Daniel listened without interruption. "So, I lost my job because I had dinner with you," he said. Elena met his gaze. "Yes." He laughed once, bitter. "That's unbelievable." "I'm holding a press conference," Elena continued. "I'll reinstate you. With back pay. And I'll restructure the contracts so this can't happen again." Daniel shook his head. "You can't just fix people's lives because you feel guilty." "I'm not fixing your life," Elena said calmly. "I'm fixing mine. I let a system hurt someone who didn't deserve it." Silence stretched. "And if I say no?" Daniel asked. Elena didn't hesitate. "Then I still do it. But I won't use your name." He studied her, really looked this time. Not the billionaire. Not the woman in headlines. A mother who'd realized power meant responsibility. "I don't want favors," Daniel said slowly. "I want fairness." Elena nodded. "That's exactly what this is." He exhaled. "Then I'll stand beside you. But not behind you." The press conference exploded. Headlines shifted. "Billionaire admits corporate retaliation, announces reforms." Daniel's face was everywhere, but this time, he wasn't framed as a charity case. He was a man who'd been wronged and heard. That night, as Daniel tucked Mia into bed, his phone buzzed. A message from Elena. "Thank you for holding me to account." He stared at the screen longer than necessary. Because what began as an unbelievable dinner had now become something far more dangerous than scandal. Trust. And once earned, it changed everything. The world expected a fairy tale. That was the problem. After the press conference, everything moved too fast. Articles, interviews, praise painted in bold headlines. Elena Moretti was called brave, principled, a billionaire with a conscience. Daniel Reyes was labeled the single dad who changed the system. Neither of them felt like celebrating. Because real change was quieter than applause. Weeks passed. Daniel returned to work, this time under a restructured contract with protections written in black and white. No special title. No spotlight. Just stability. The kind that let him sleep without counting hours in the dark. Mia's shoes stayed matched. Leo started smiling more. And Elena found herself pausing at the end of long days, staring out over the city she'd conquered, wondering why it no longer felt enough. The first time she invited Daniel and Mia over for dinner, she almost canceled. This wasn't a restaurant. No waiters. No exits through side doors. Just her home. "I can say no," Daniel told himself as he rang the bell. He didn't. Leo opened the door before the staff could reach it. "You came." Mia stepped inside, eyes wide. "It smells like lemons." "That's the candles," Leo said proudly. "Mom says they help her think." Elena appeared in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, hair loose. "No armor tonight." "Pizza," she announced. "Burned slightly. I take full responsibility." Daniel laughed despite himself. They ate at the kitchen island. No rules. No phones. Just grease-stained napkins and shared stories. Daniel talked about Mia's mother, her laugh, her stubborn kindness. Elena spoke of Leo's father. The quiet nights, the dreams they never finished building. There were no dramatic confessions. Just understanding. Later, as the children sprawled on the floor building something crooked and ambitious out of blocks, Daniel stood beside Elena at the window. You didn't have to keep showing up, he said. Elena nodded. I know. Why do you? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Because for a long time, she said finally, I've believed power meant never needing anyone. You reminded me that's not strength. That's loneliness. Daniel absorbed that. You changed my life, he said carefully. Elena shook her head.
No.
You changed my direction. Silence settled, not awkward, but full. In the weeks that followed, they were seen together occasionally. A park. A school event. Nothing flashy. Speculation bloomed anyway. They ignored it. What mattered happened when no one was watching. Like the night Mia had a fever and Elena showed up with soup and stayed until morning. Or when Leo panicked before a school recital and Daniel knelt beside him, steady and calm, the way fathers do. Or when Elena missed a board meeting for the first time in her career, to watch two children chase pigeons and laugh. One evening, months later, they returned to the same restaurant. Not for headlines. For closure. The maitre d' recognized them instantly and froze. Before he could speak, Elena smiled. Table for 4. We have a reservation. Daniel squeezed her hand. Not possessive. Grounded. As they were seated, Mia whispered, Daddy, is this where my birthday started? He nodded.
Yeah.
And where our family started? She asked. The word hung there. Elena didn't correct her. Neither did Daniel. Because family, they'd learned, wasn't built in grand gestures or public moments. It was built when someone saw you, truly saw you, and chose to stay. Not out of obligation. Not out of charity. But out of love. And that was the most unbelievable thing of all.